Would you like me to sort your delivery?
You are generous as you are divine, oh booty queens and booty queens.
I don't give a damn what you're entitled to. So if you don't like it, you can take back your food and your castle and right off.
You should treat books with more respect.
Welcome to Mystery Pony Fiction, hosted by the Mystery Fluttershy fan.
Okay, so, by moonbutters. Okay, so there's this pony, right? And she's a mare, she/her pronouns and all that. So she walks into this bar. No, it wasn't a physical bar. Well, it was an actual bar, but in the sense of a place where they serve drinks and stuff and ponies hang out. And not the structural kind, or the law exam. I do admit, the law exam would be funny, but that's not the point here. So she walks into this bar and sits on a stool and sighs deeply. She looks troubled. The bartender asks her, "Why the long face? Get it? 'Cause she's a pony?" Hey, come on, it was funny, a classic. Hey, don't stop reading. See, I can do better, trust me. So, the mayor sighs again and looks up at the bartender. He's polishing a glass with a cloth and his wings. He's a Pegasus, so the mayor looks up at the bartender, right? She says to him, "My work saddled me with too much responsibility." So the bartender, he says, "Why the big pause?" And the mayor cocks her head at him and looks at him funny and replies, "I don't have paws, I have hooves." Oh, come on, the puns aren't doing it for you? Okay, I'll try something different. Trust me, you'll love it. Alright, so the bartender, he thinks she's messing with him and she starts laughing, and it takes him a few seconds to realise she was serious. So he stops laughing because he thought she would find it rude and he just wants to be nice. So he tries to explain it to her. I meant pause as in you, didn't say anything for a few seconds. Thought you were making a joke. This mare, she's the understanding sort. She raises an eyebrow and says, "It's no big deal. I'm just kind of out of it right now." And then she rests her chin on the bar top and closes her eyes. So the bartender, the glass he had been polishing was clean and polished. So he turned around to swap it with an unpolished glass. So he turns back to this mare and says, "Well, are you sure now's the best time to have a drink?" So the mare opens one eye to look at him and says, "Yeah, I just want to not think about it, and I think a drink would help. Appreciate the concern though." So the bartender, he gets her a drink, some hard cider, and she picks it up with her hoof and drinks some of it. Yeah, she's an earth pony. So the bartender, 'cause he wants to be nice, says to her, "I might have something to take your mind off things. I have this friend who is currently in the bathroom. He's a changeling, one of the reformed ones, right? And he has this special talent where he can turn into objects. He also has a pet bird named Tonight that may or may not be possessed by the ghost of an old vocalist. How about that?" The mayor takes another swig of her cider before she replies, "Sounds interesting, I guess. Say, you have any special drinks?" And then she finishes off her cider. The bartender takes a moment to think, and then he says to her, "Well, I have this drink I call Melody, because it feels like one in your mouth. And after two, some creatures start singing. It also happens to be my friend's favourite drink. I don't think I mentioned, but his name is Dan." The mayor also thinks for a moment, more for show, because honestly the melody sounded pretty good to her. She says, "Well, I'll try a melody then." And so the bartender makes her one, and she tries it, and he watches her try it with pride, because he's pretty darn proud of that cocktail concoction. So the mayor goes all, and "Wow, this is good," and stuff like that, because it was pretty good. So Dan comes out of the bathroom with a bird on his head. I told you already, but Dan's a changeling, and the bird's name is Tonight. I don't know what he was doing in the bathroom with the bird, not important here. So Dan goes to the bar and sits next to the mare. Her name is Sandy Dunes, and sees that she's drinking a melody. So he says to her, "Hey, what do you think of the melody? It's my favourite drink from old whiskey here." And yeah, whiskey is the bartender's name. Should have mentioned that earlier, I guess. So Sandy finishes off her melody and says to Dan, "Oh, you must be Dan. I thought the melody tasted pretty good, I guess." She then asks Whiskey for another, and so Dan pipes up and says, "I'll take one too." Whiskey's the clever sort, so he opens a proposition to Dan. "What say I give it to you for free, but you gotta help me cheer up this mare?" So Dan loves his melodies, so he heartily agrees, and then asks Sandy, "Say, what can I do to cheer you up?" And she thinks for a moment and asks, "You can turn into objects, right?" And Dan says, "Sure can." So Sandy thinks for another moment and then says, "Could you turn into a piano?" And Dan chuckles at that, because it's kind of silly, but still he says, "I can do that, sure. Might need a melody first though." So Whiskey makes 3 melodies, one for Sandy, one for Dan, and one for himself for the fun of it, and they all drink up. So Dan gets away from the bar, because pianos are kind of large, you know, and he focuses on it for a moment, and then, bam, here's a piano. So Sandy claps her hooves and asks, "Can you play yourself?" And Dan says, "Sure can," and plays a little tune. So Dan's bird tonight hears the tune and sings along a little. And it's amazing. Sandy loves it, and Whiskey loves it, and Dan loves it. And tonight is a bird, so no pony knows what's going on in a bird's brain. Well, maybe Fluttershy, but still. So Sandy claps her hooves again and she says, "Maybe you could sing along with your bird." And Dan starts hemming and hawing and says, "I don't know." So Sandy gets off her stool and she's a little woozy, but she's feeling better. So she says, "Sing us a song. You're a piano, Dan. Sing us a song tonight. Well, we're all in the mood for a melody and you've got us feeling alright." Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider joining my Patreon, patreon.com/TMFF, to get early access to audiobooks and to be able to request I do a reading of what you want, provided the author approves. Thank you to artlist.io for providing the massive music and sound effect library that I have to work with. And most of all, thank you to the bronies who write the amazing stories that inspire me to make these. Fluttershy and Izzy are best ponies. I now have a Discord server where you can join in and chat with other fanfiction fans. If you enjoy what I do, you can donate to me on Ko-Fi, links in the description.